In this episode, Bill explores that loneliness is very real. It can strip us of our humanness. Bill shares his thoughts on changing loneliness into solitude. A choice? Is it possible? Is there a difference? Expanding upon the theological thought of systematic theologian Paul Tillich, Bill looks at the difference between these two experiences and looks back to a story of an old Christian brother from high school. Loneliness can take us down into places that destroy our humanness. The other, solitude, the cousin of loneliness, can turn loneliness into something else that holds us through the hardest of times. Bill shares a message grounded in Romans chapter 8, verses 31, 35, and 37, originally presented online. Come, explore the possibilities. Peace and blessings, and welcome to the new Awaken Kindness with DaRevsUSA, with your host, the Reverend Dr. Penny Taylor, and or the Reverend Dr. Bill Ressl. Please be sure to share this podcast with others and visit us at growim.com to learn more about our self-development tools and to join the GrowIM members community for free. Free membership includes access to our members-only section on the growim.com website featuring special content, discount codes, and more. And thank you for joining us today. So I have a question for you today. It's really about two words: loneliness and solitude. Are they the same? Are they different? Which one might be better or harder? So let's get into it. We all have experienced loneliness in some way. Loneliness can become very real. It can feel like suffering and aloneness, almost falling prey to the darkness of life, isolation that can take us down into places, can feel like exile, can make us feel very small, insignificant. It's a hard spot, a hard place. Well, I'd like to introduce you to the cousin of loneliness, known as solitude. Solitude is very similar to loneliness in that you can be isolated. But a major difference is there's a sense of centeredness, an understanding, a connection of the multidimensional unity of life, this interconnectedness of life with one another and with God. And it turns loneliness, being lonely, into a sense of solitude, being connected with the entire world, although possibly not physically connected at the moment. So what do I mean? Well, I've been thinking about this. I actually thought about this for a long time. I actually started in high school, and for me, that's a few years back. I went to a Christian Brothers de La Salle high school, an all-boys school, and we had an option for study hall each day. We could go to the library, or we could go to the cafeteria. Well, my normal choice was to go where else? The cafeteria. Have a cookie, gab, goof around. On those rare occasions, though, when I didn't have my homework done for the next class after study hall, I'd make sure I got into the library. And back then, libraries were a little bit different than they are now. They were very quiet places. So quiet, in fact, that if there was any noise, someone would usually stare at you like the people who ran the library and say, "Be quiet." And that was pretty normal. Sometimes I was afraid to simply flip the page of a book for it sounding, echoing through the library. But it was a great spot to get homework done. On those days when I did get to the library, there were two Christian brothers, who ran the library. And one of them was an elderly gentleman. He was a rather large guy, seemingly friendly enough. And he would sit at the very front of the library, his own desk table, and he would watch everyone walk in. The door was always to his left here. He would watch everyone walk in, take their seat. And if someone said something, he'd refine the rules again. This is a library to be quiet. It's a study hall. He's very clear about that. And then, as everyone sat down, found their place, he would always take his book, which was laying next to him, open it up, lay it on the desk in front of him, the table in front of him, and begin to read. Not quite sure he ever finished the thing, but he would begin to read. And every time I was ever there, it was pretty much the same story. About 5 minutes into his reading the book, his eyes would close, his head would drop. And I often thought he was dead. But no, he was alive. How do I know? Periodically he'd snore. And sometimes wake himself up. Mostly just snore. Well, you can imagine in an all-boys school, he was sometimes the brunt of some jokes. So one day, one of the younger brothers sort of pulled us aside and said, "You got to know the story of that brother, because you guys are making fun of him, and he deserves your respect." Maybe it was a lesson in ageism, I don't know. But it was a lesson, and it has to do with the sense of loneliness on one side and solitude on the other. What do I mean? That old brother, we were told, had a reason to fall asleep, if he wished to do so. He had been in the concentration camps during World War II in Europe. He had been put into solitude, isolated, with an attempt to break his spirit. But we were told he was the same person who walked in and who walked out, and they never broke his spirit. Regardless how isolated they made it, no matter how confining in exile they could force him into, he never broke. And I think that's solitude. And he had a sense of solitude. So what do I mean? We were told that that young brother hoped none of us would ever have to go through what that older brother had gone through. And I hope we never do. But that older brother always remained connected. He knew God was with him. And even more so, he knew that his community of Christian brothers, the DaRevsUSA brothers around the world, were praying for him each and every day. And those prayers kept him whole. His relationship with God kept him whole. And that's a story of solitude, a much different story than loneliness. Loneliness destroys us. Solitude holds us. You could say holds us in the palm of God's hand. It helps us to remain a centered self, a person capable of remaining whole in the hardest of times. And it's really as easy as accepting God is present right here, right now, as well as there's a multidimensional unity of love that you are part of. There are folks in our church as well as around the world praying for folks right now who are in self-isolation, which can be very hard. But I encourage you, don't fall into loneliness. Don't fall into despair. Know that God is with you. Know that there are folks out there that you are connected with, even though you may be in your own home all by yourself. Know that God is with you. And I pray that you find the solitude that that old brother had, the capacity to beat this thing and make it past it. And when we all get back into our normal way of life, that we're fully back. That loneliness doesn't destroy us, but solitude holds us and builds us up. My prayer for you this day, let's all practice a bit of solitude and thank God for this moment to be together. And thank God for that young brother many years ago who took us aside to tell the story of that old brother. For I get to share it with you today. Amen. Once again, thank you for joining us today on the new Awaken Kindness with DaRevsUSA. Please be sure to share this podcast and visit us at growim.com to learn more about our self-development tools and to join the GrowIM members community for free. Free membership includes access to our members-only section on the growim.com website, featuring special content, discount codes, and more. Until we meet again, peace and blessings.